Okay, I'm recording it. Okay, so I'm gonna tell her that we're gonna start. Okay, so I've got it. I think I'd started recording it. So why don't you go ahead, Mary Beth, if you want to start.
Okay. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, you have the screen sharing disabled.
Oh, sorry. Let me
That's all
fix
right.
that. Okay, try it now. Hopefully I hit the right one.
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Okay, so let me start by asking, can you see my screen? It says Trinity Valley Community College in the upper left. Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. All right, so let me see if I can zoom in. I'll zoom in as well, that's too far. I was going to say as far as I can before things start blowing off the screen. So hopefully you'll be able to see this okay. So um, first of all, thank you for having me tonight. I'm Marybeth Everhart. I'm the National Marketing Manager for Realtime Coach. And what I'm going to do is give you kind of an overview of how to use the product to progress in your speed. So um, I'm logged on to the Trinity Valley Community College Real-Time Coach site. And what I'll have to do is afterwards, I'll need to get, and Judy, you can just email me this information tomorrow. I'll just need to get everybody's info, just their first name, last name, and email address.
Okay.
And I'll have to get you all enrolled so that you can log on and then make a purchase. There are a couple things that I need to get done before you can do that, but once you log on, there's actually going to be another button over here to the right of the help button, and it's just going to be a big blue button that says join, and you'll click on that. And I'm only going to give you one option, so there won't be a lot of decisions to make. And that option is going to be speed building, starting at 80 words per minute and all the way up through 225. So you'll have access to all kinds of speed building material. Once you join, what you want to do is then go to the help menu. And by the way, anytime tonight, if I'm describing something and you're not seeing that, whatever I'm describing on your screen, just put a hand up and let me know, because sometimes Zoom doesn't always follow me and I have to do another screen share. So if I describe something again and you don't see it, just holler. So if you go to the help menu and you go to setup, you will see that there are setup instructions for all CAT software. So what CAT software are your students using?
They're using Stenograph's Case Catalyst.
Case Catalyst. Okay,
Yes.
so what you're going to do is just click on the Case Catalyst setup and just follow these instructions. And if you follow them and do what it says at the bottom, which is save the settings, then you only have to do this one time. And each time you're going to use Real-Time Coach with Case Catalyst, you just choose the settings that you've saved. And what will happen is when you write material in Real-Time Coach, the real-time feed will come from Case Catalyst into RTC, and then we're going to be able to grade your writing and give you immediate feedback. So again, that's just under the help menu and setup. Now, when we create logins for you, we will send an email. So you'll get an email from our customer care that gives you the link to the site. We'll give you your login credentials and then remind you of how to set things up and get started. Okay, so once you've set up, you're going to just then go to the play menu. And what you're going to see now, I'm logged in as an administrator, so I get to see everything. What you guys are going to see after you've done that join button is you're going to see this 80 words per minute to 225. So depending on what speed you're working on, and it sounds like everybody's in that 80 to 100 words per minute, you're going to start at the speed that you're interested in. So let's just say 80 words per minute. And the way it's going to be set up is that we put you in what we call a gated pathway, which means that we're going to give you practice material and we're going to set accuracy goals for each of the exercises. So you have to write every exercise in the practice session. And in this case, let's see how many there are. Get Zoom out of my way so I can actually count. So there's 4 thumbnails and there's 4 thumbnails. So you've got 8 exercises that you'll need to write in the first practice session, and you'll have accuracy goals for each one. And once you hit those accuracy goals, then your tests for that speed or that session are going to open up, as will the second practice session. So right now, because I'm logged in as an administrator, you see everything is open to me. But what you all are going to see is you'll see these things listed here. So session 1 testing, session 2 practice, session 2 testing. You'll see them, but they'll be grayed out and they will not open up until you have met the goals for your practice session. So let me start by asking, does that make sense? That you're going to have
Mhm.
weekly or session goals. It's sort of laid out by the week, but you may finish it in 3 days or you may finish it in 3 weeks, depending on what your daily schedule is or your work schedule. At the beginning of each of those pathways is going to be a folder that says lots of information. Start here. Obviously, this is where you want to start, especially when you're brand new to Real-Time Coach, as you all will be. There are going to be quite a few PDF files that will just sort of help you get the lay of the land. The first one here is how a learning pathway works. So what I'm describing to you now, there's a PDF that explains how this works. There's a PDF on practice tips for clean writing. So that's a good one for you to go back and refer to. That way you don't have to remember everything that I say tonight or try to make, copious notes. There are PDFs in here that will be helpful for you to go back and read, and you can read them as many times as you want. You can open them up and print them out. So they will always be here. There's a PDF on what we call focused feedback, and I'm going to show you in a minute what the focused feedback is. That's the analysis we give you after each exercise. When we grade your writing, we give you focused feedback, which is going to show you the categories of errors where you've made mistakes and the number of errors in each of those categories, and then you'll actually be able to look at them and work on resolving them. There's a PDF on how to take a test in Real-Time Coach, so that might be kind of handy. There's a PDF on reviewing your graded tests. There's a little video on getting help in Real-Time Coach. And then I put a couple of practice tests in here. So after you read the PDF on, where is it? How to take a test in Real-Time Coach, you can actually go take a couple of practice tests as well. All makes sense so far? I'll look over in the corner here to see if I see heads nodding. Okay, so that's how the pathways are going to be laid out for you. They're going to be in this sort of gated pathway where part of the reason we do it that way is so that you're very focused on specifically what you need to get to 80 words per minute. So for instance, if we go to the first practice session, in the lower speeds, so 80 and 100, and I think even in 120, there are theory reinforcement exercises. So there are exercises that are going to be lower speeds, and they're going to be easier material, and they're going to focus on certain aspects of theory. So like this first one here, you can see it says it's number usage, and it's 30 words per minute. So nice and slow. You're going to focus on your accuracy with the slow ones like that. And you're going to also see that we start with practice material that is slower. So we've got quite a few things at 50 word, a couple at 50 words a minute and a couple at 70 words per minute. I always start at the beginning of a speed building pathway. I start much lower than your goal speed. So this is 80 words per minute. We anticipate that at the end of this, you will be writing 80 words per minute at a pretty high accuracy. And if we go down and look, there are 16 practice and testing sessions. Okay, so they're going to start at the lower speed. And as you work through the practice sessions, what's going to happen to the speed? It's going to increase. Okay, so we're expecting at the end of these 16 practice sessions, you will be at that 80 words per minute. So then when you move on to 100 words per minute, we know you're writing at 80 words per minute. So we're going to start your practice at about 85 words per minute and then go up to 100 and beyond. So does that make sense? Everything's going to be slower for practice. Your tests will be at that goal speed. So your tests are going to be at 80 words per minute or 100 words per minute or what have you. The practice is going to start slower and increase. So that kind of makes sense?
Mhm.
The other thing to note is that the material, the practice material in Real-Time Coach is dense. The philosophy behind this is you should practice harder than you test. If you're practicing harder than you test, that means the tests are going to sound easier. When something sounds easier, it gives you more confidence, you're more likely to pass it. So the practice material is going to be hard, it's going to be dense, and oftentimes when it's 50 words per minute or 70 words per minute, it sounds faster because it's denser material. And what I mean by that is it's just harder words than the actual tests. Okay, so no going in, the practice material is going to be hard. That's intentional. We want you to practice hard so that when you go to take a test or when you finish and you go to work, you're used to practicing harder than what you're going to be hearing either for your test or typically on the job. So last time I'm going to ask about this part. Does this make sense? Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into an exercise and we're going to look at how it works and how to use it. So I've got one that I've already written, so that saves us a little bit of time here. So this is what it looks like when you launch a test and an exercise, and I'm going to zoom out just a tiny bit if I can, because what happens when I zoom in too tight, everything over here on the right starts to all kind of smush together and it doesn't display properly. So let's talk about what you're going to see when you first go into an exercise. So over here on the right, this sort of big white box has quite a bit of information in it. The first thing you see is where it says voice assignments, and then it's going to tell you who's doing the speaking. Now, we only see two talking heads, right? When you only see two talking heads here, we know it's going to be just a two voice, which means it's just going to be Q&A. So you're not going to do any speaker identifications. It's just going to be QA, QA. So you're kind of bouncing back and forth. So there's no other names listed in here because it's just going to be Q&A. If this were a three voice, over here across from colloquy 1, you would have a name. So let's just say the name there is Mr. Gibson. You have to decide, okay, how am I going to identify Mr. Gibson when he starts speaking in this exercise? So you'll go ahead and go into Case Catalyst, start a real-time file, and now you're going to write Mr. Gibson. How are you going to write it? Are you going to write Gib Gib? Are you going to use one of your speaker tokens like SNU? However you want to do it, you'll go ahead and job define that in Case Catalyst. So when you start writing the exercise, Mr. Gibson will translate correctly when he speaks. Does that make sense? Kind of? Yeah. Okay. Think about this big white box here as the same approach you will take as a working reporter, which means that when you go out on a deposition or you're in court, every day when you start the day, you're trying to gather as much information you can about the case you're going to hear that day. So you're going to be getting, let's say you're in a deposition and the attorneys start coming in, you're going to get business cards, you're going to get a copy of the case caption so you can see, okay, who's the plaintiff, who's the defendant, what are some words that might come up. So that's part of what the voice assignments are up here. And then down below, you see where it says words. And we have two columns here. We have the personal dictionary and the job dictionary. Now, a lot of times in the real-time coach exercises, you won't see any words listed in the personal dictionary section. This is really when there are words that we know are going to come up. They're maybe not really common words, so you may not have them in your personal dictionary, but you should, so they would be listed here. So you may not always have personal dictionary entries listed, but you almost always have job dictionary words listed. Again, we know these names are going to come up in this exercise. So what are you going to do before you even start the exercise? You're going to decide, okay, how am I going to write these? How am I going to write Heaton, Marie, South Brighton? Write those because you already have a real-time file started. Define those for your job dictionary and case catalyst. So when you write the exercise, these words will translate properly and that will improve your score. Make sense? One other thing you can do here is then after you've decided how you're going to write them and you've job defined them, you can click on this practice job dictionary button and it will play a list of the job dictionary words and you can practice writing those and you'll see, are they translating properly? Are they coming up correctly in Case Catalyst and then out to Real-Time Coach? So again, before you even get started, you know for sure that they're translating properly. All right, so far so good? All right, so let's look at the exercise and how to actually play the exercise. So the first thing I want you to notice is down here in the right-hand corner, you see this sort of colorful bar and it says normal. Hopefully it's big enough that you can see that. It says normal. If I grab that bar and start dragging it to the left, you'll see these little pop-ups that say 5% slower, 10% slower, 15% slower, and 20% slower. So I can slow it down in 5% increments and I can speed it up also in 5% increments. So that means that you can use the same exercise in at multiple speeds. So not just the default speed. And we're going to talk about the best way to use that in just a second. Okay, the other thing to notice is these icons along the bottom. The first one we see is this kind of purple video camera. So that's what we're looking at is the video. You know it's a video because as soon as I selected that exercise, when it loaded up, I saw the talking heads, right? I see these two people. I know that when I click play, these two are going to start talking. The next icon is this green megaphone. If I click on that, my talking heads disappear, don't they? So if I were to click play now, I would hear it, I'd get the audio, but I would not see the talking heads. Who can tell me why I might want to just listen to the audio and not watch the video? Is there any reason for that?
Get distracted?
Great. You can be distracted by them. Okay. Some people find it very distracting to watch the people talking. The other thing is if you do what I am terribly guilty of, which is I tend to read lips when they're talking. And that is all well and good if you're in person with people, but we all learn pretty quickly with the pandemic that if you rely on reading lips when they're talking, you don't always see them when it's a remote. case. So if you tend to be a lip reader, this is a good way to get yourself out of the habit of that. So now you're just hearing it and you're not seeing them. So that's two reasons. And then there's a third reason. Playing videos eats up a lot of bandwidth on your internet. Okay. So if you click play and maybe it starts playing and then it pauses and you see it's trying to load up, or the video is really stuttery, you don't really have good bandwidth to play video. So if you switch to audio, it will play a lot smoother because audio files are much smaller. So three reasons there why you might want to do the audio and not the video. Then the next icon we have is this, it's an orange piece of paper with like a little dog-eared corner here. I'm going to click play so you can see what this looks like. And this is what we call text mode. So this is really just the scrolling text of what's going to be said if you're listening to audio or to video. Do you ever do what we always called in school hard copy work, where you actually write from the printed text? That's essentially what this is hard copy work. Here's the value of this, because most working reporters and students will say, there's no need for me to write from the text because I'll never do that as a reporter. I'm always going to hear it. Well, that part is true. But here's what's really beneficial about the scrolling text is it gives you a chance to visualize that transcript, to visualize what you're going to write before you even start hearing it. Okay, so you can click on play and you're going to get the scrolling text. And as you're writing in Case Catalyst, your text is feeding in here in the My Transcript window. So your text is going to flow in here while this text is scrolling on the left. So it also gives you a chance to not only visualize what your transcript is going to look like, you can make sure that what's coming up here in the My Transcript window is translating correctly. If you need to pause it, you can pause and you can go over to Case Catalyst and define a word that maybe didn't come up. You can come back here and click play and continue. So remember I told you there was that PDF in the very first, in that folder that says lots of information start here, there was a PDF on clean writing habits that walks you through using this as well. So this is a great way to practice an exercise before you start listening to it or viewing the video. Does that make sense? Yes, kind of, sort of? Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click play and I'm going to leave us in text mode, because if I put us in audio or video modes, because I've got a headset on, what will happen is I'll be hearing the audio in my headset and I'll be trying to talk above that. And you guys will wonder why I'm talking funny, because I'm kind of yelling above the audio. So if I leave us in text mode, when I click play, you're going to see again the text scrolling. So you're going to see what I would be writing, and that's going to flow here into the My Transcript window. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to just go copy the text so we don't have to watch me writing it. So imagine, if you will, I'm listening to the audio, or I could be writing it from text mode, and my text is flowing in from my CAT software. I happen to use Eclipse, so it would be flowing in from Eclipse. For you, it's flowing in from Case Catalyst in here into the My Transcript window. So is everybody following along? You're writing, and it's going to flow here into My Transcript. When you finish writing the entire exercise, you're going to click here on the Check Transcript button. And let me see if I need to do another share. It maybe is following me. Okay. So when you click on that check transcript button, what Realtime Coach does is it goes through and it grades your real-time feed against what we call the master transcript. So you're seeing a couple of things here. First of all, are you seeing on the left-hand side where it says focused feedback? Does everybody see that? Okay, and then we have the master transcript and the my transcript windows. So in the master transcript window, you see there are words in bold. If you look over at the my transcript window, you see those same words are in bold, but what you see just before those bolded words in red is the incorrect version. So the part I got wrong. So in this first example, I should have written has been sworn and I wrote sworns. So I dragged my final S in there. So it's showing me what I did wrong and putting the correct word next to it. So if I wanted to, I got to get zoom out of my way here. I could scroll through and do a comparison, the correct words next to or compared to the words I got wrong. But that's kind of a tedious approach. What I want you to do instead is I want you to come over here to the focused feedback. The idea behind this is, look, we are going to tell you how many errors you made in the most common categories that we all share. All steno writers tend to make errors in the same types of categories. And actually, voice writers tend to get them wrong in the same categories as well. So we've chosen the categories of most common errors. We want you now to focus on those errors, resolve them in your writing, and every time you fix one in an exercise in Realtime Coach, you're likely to fix it in the next exercise and the next exercise and the next test, and you're setting up then good writing habits as you go forward. So let's talk about these categories of errors. The first one is just all errors. And you see, I made 55 errors in this roughly 5-minute exercise. I'm going to advise you to ignore the all errors because, frankly, if I think about 55 errors in 5 minutes, I kind of get overwhelmed. So I want you to ignore all errors and I want to talk about some of these other categories. Let's talk about this first one. Untranslates. Who can tell me what an untranslate is? Anybody?
When it's not in the dictionary?
When it's not in the dictionary, you got it. So it's not translated, right? It's not in the dictionary, so it's not translated. So what happens is it's going to appear as an error in your transcript, okay? So watch, did you notice what happened when I switched from all errors to just the untranslates? All of those words disappeared, didn't they? All those 55 errors disappeared. And now if I scroll through, all I'm going to see are those 6 untranslates. So immediately we're focusing your attention on one type of error, not all of those errors. So how do we resolve 6 untranslates? We go over to Case Catalyst. And what do we do with untranslates? How do we make them translate?
Add it to your dictionary?
Add them to your dictionary. Yep. It could be your personal dictionary. It could be a job dictionary. You know when you see it, right? Is that a common word that should go in my main dictionary? Or is that a word that's just going to come up for this job? So you go over to Case Catalyst. You define those 6 entries. You click on the back to exercise. And you write it again. And then you grade it again. Ideally, what will happen to this number 6 after you have defined those words in Case Catalyst and you've written this exercise again? What's going to happen to that number?
It's gonna get lower.
It should get lower. Yep. And if all goes well, it gets to 0, right? So even if it just gets lower, let's say it goes from 6 to 2, if that number goes down, what happens to your real-time accuracy up here?
That'll go up.
It'll go up. That is instant gratification, isn't it? All I had to do was fix my untrans, and immediately I get an improvement in my score. So always start with the untrans. We know what they are and we know how to fix them. So it's easy. That's that instant gratification category. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let's look then at another category of errors. So we have sort of a big category, which is dropped words, but we have subcategories within that dropped words category. I'm going to skip the first one and come back to it. I'm going to go to this one, a, and that. Now, it just so happens I didn't drop any of those little words, but here's what we're looking for. Are you dropping A's, ands, that's, thes? Are you dropping the little words? If you are, it's typically because what you're working on is too fast for you. We tend to drop the little words because we can fill those in when we transcribe. Okay, we're hanging on for dear life to get the bigger words and letting the little ones go. So if I got 0 or dropped 0 little words, then the speed of this exercise really isn't a problem for me. That said, instead of 0, what if I dropped 25 little words? If I dropped 25 little words in 5 minutes, do you think this would be a little too fast for me or a lot too fast for me? And if
A
you haven't
lot.
realized by now, I ask a question so I can take a drink of tea.
It would be a lot. And
Okay,
Princess
great.
said
I
it would
think,
be a
yeah,
lot.
Princess said it. Thank you. And I interrupted to talk about tea. Yeah, you are correct. If I drop 25 little words in 5 minutes, this is really too fast for me. So what I'm going to do is go back to the exercise. And instead of just moving on to something else, what I'm going to do is slow it down. And in this case, because we said it's a lot too fast for me, I'm going to slow it down as far as I can. So 20% slower. And I'm going to write it again. And I'm going to grade it again. And I am going to write it at that 20% slower as many times as I need to get this category, the number in this category, down very low. Doesn't necessarily have to be 0, but we really want it low, 2 or 3 at the most. Okay, so I'm going to write it again and again and again if I have to at 20% slower until I get this number down to a very manageable number. So 2 or 3 or 0. Once I do that, I'm now going to start moving the speed back up or increasing the speed. So I'm going to go from 20% slower to 15% slower. And I'm going to take that same approach. I'm going to write it again and again and again, as many times as I need to again keep that number in just this one category, keep that very low or at 0. So I'm going to keep working just that one category of error until I get the speed all the way back to the default, or what we call normal, and still keep that category of error very low. Does that make sense? So I'm not focused on all 55 errors. I'm trying to pick one category at a time and work on that. Once I've got that category under control, then I'm going to go to another one. So let's go to the next dropped words category, and that's this group of 3 plus. I fondly refer to this as blowing chunks. And this is how it works. You will hear a word, or more likely a phrase, and you start having a conversation with yourself. You hear the phrase, you stop writing, and the conversation goes something like, I think I have a brief for that. As a matter of fact, we were talking about that brief in class the other night. I even wrote it down on a little Post-it note and put it on my machine. And then you're wondering, where did the Post-it note go? So you have this whole conversation with yourself, and then you remember that brief and you write it perfectly. And you should. You took 10 minutes to think about it, right? But you write it perfectly, and then what happens to the chunk of words that follow? Blown, right? So you hesitated, got the word or phrase correct, and then you blew a chunk. So here's how we use this group of 3+. We're going to scroll through, and are we going to worry about the chunks of words we dropped? Let's see, in this case, I dropped 9 words. Am I going to worry about those 9 words? Are those 9 words the problem, or is it what happened before the 9 words that's a problem?
What happened before?
What happened before? Exactly. That phrase, and for me, it's going to be where was. That phrase, where was, caused me to hesitate. By the time I remembered what it was and stroked it beautifully, look, it translated very nicely, I dropped 9 words. So if something like this, like a phrase like where was, is causing me to drop 9 words, what should I do about that phrase? Should I just keep writing it the same way? Thoughts?
Find it to something that you can remember.
Yeah, exactly. If you cannot remember this phrase well enough to write it quickly without dropping 9 words, then there's a problem with the way you're writing it. Maybe it's, not every phrase or every brief makes sense to everybody. So if you've got some phrases or briefs that you're really struggling with, reach out to your instructors. Hey, I'm really struggling with this word. Can you give me some other ideas of how to write it? Or frankly, if you want to get just a plethora of suggestions, go onto Facebook, jump on a couple of court reporting groups and say, hey, how do you guys write this? And you will have dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of suggestions before the night is up. So pick one that makes sense to you, put it in your dictionary, go ahead and leave the old way in there just in case every now and then you fall back on it. But once you have the new way of writing it in your dictionary, click on that back to exercise, write it again. And what's going to happen? What's going to start to happen to the number here in this group of 3+? It's
It's going to go down.
going to go down. Yep. And every time these numbers go down, what happens to that number up there?
Goes up.
It goes up. Easy peasy. At least it sounds easy peasy, doesn't it? Not always as easy. Okay, let's look at the wrong words category. We've got some subcategories. And the one that is the most common is this first one here, final S. What we're saying is you are dragging or dropping your final S, and that is the most common mistake we all as steno writers make. So you've got 13 of these. There are a couple of things that will cause us to do that. One is just we have weaker fingers. The little finger is weak, um, weaker than the others. One thing that's worth noting is the your thumb, your forefinger, and your middle finger each have their own tendon, but your ring finger and little finger share a tendon. So it's really hard to move one without the other one coming along for the ride. Okay, so you need to either practice more with that little finger, or you can also do some adjustments on your steno machine that makes that final S a little less sensitive so that you really have to get a good solid stroke on that S and it doesn't just come along for the ride. The other wrong word category is really helpful because we all know what untrans are, right? We talked about untranslates. Those are words that are not in your dictionary. When you have the other, an, when you have a wrong word in the other category, those wrong words can be things that are in the dictionary incorrectly, or they could be words that you think you're writing correctly and you're not. Okay, so the wrong words are actually, in some cases, a little more dangerous than an untranslate. An untranslate, when you go to edit or proofread your transcript, will you see an untranslate? Will it stand out to you? It should, right? It's steno, it's not English. The problem with wrong words in this other category is they are words that are in English. They may make perfectly good sense in a sentence, but they are the wrong word. So definitely pay attention to these wrong words, other category, because that can help you find things that are what we call mistranslates. They're translating incorrectly. And again, it could be that you are simply hearing and or writing the wrong word, or they're in your dictionary incorrectly. Does this all kind of make sense? Okay, good. So what you want to do is really just pay attention to these categories of errors and focus on one category at a time. Again, the idea being, let's highlight one category, reduce the errors in that category, and as we're fixing them here, we're going to fix them across the board. So questions, comments, thoughts?
So let's just say that you had to correct the untranslates in case.
Yep.
Do you have to like restart and then open it back up for it to carry over to this, or would it
That,
automatically sync?
that is a great question. So because everything is coming from Case Catalyst into Realtime Coach, as soon as you correct it in Case Catalyst, the next time you write it, if it's translating properly in Case Catalyst, it's going to come out correctly to Realtime Coach. So all you have to do is, what I did was I clicked on that button to go back to the exercise. So let's say now I go to Case Catalyst and I correct something or change something in my dictionary. As soon as I click play and start writing again, it's all going to come right over to Realtime Coach. So great question. This is kind of a quick and dirty look at how Realtime Coach works, just because I don't want to throw tons of stuff at you. And what we'll do when I have everything set up so it's ready for you to purchase, I will also include my email address. So as you're getting started and taking a look around, if you've got questions, if there's anything I can help you with, you can just reach out. And I'll make sure you've got customer cares uh, email as well. But for you guys, mostly it's going to be a question of sort of, am I using this right? Am I getting started correctly? So other questions? No? Are you overwhelmed, underwhelmed, whelmed? Is there a whelmed? Is there a whelmed? We are overwhelmed and underwhelmed. Is there a whelmed? Is there a middle of the road? We're just whelmed.
Yeah, I'm just whelmed.
You're just whelmed? Okay. All right. Well, you heard it here first. It's a word. We're just whelmed.
I'll ask a quick question.
Sure.
When you were talking about the practice, and you said it's
Yep.
denser words versus the tests. Is it comparable to like since they started speed building, they use EV360, and we were
Okay.
told that the practice is the content, the words per minute has been counted per word, but the tests are counted per syllable.
Syllable. Yeah.
So, which still syllabically, I guess, would be somewhat easier. So is that similar?
Correct.
Or
Yes,
okay.
same concept. Exactly. So all of our practice material is strictly word count. Okay. So however many words there should be. And I could never, even as a teacher, I could never do the math. Let's say it's if it's 100 words a minute, I can do the math. and it's 5 minutes, then it should be a total of 500 words, right?
Mhm.
So it'll be 500 words. Some of them might be, some of those 500 words might be 3 syllables. Maybe a bunch of those words are 3 syllables. So in terms of writing it, it's very dense. Whereas the testing is based for NCRA purposes, it's based on what they call a 1.44 syllabic density, which means all of the words, all 500 words, average a little less than 1.5 syllables per word. Okay, so it is much more evenly paced, I guess is the way to say it when it's syllabic density. So that makes it easier. And you will find as you go up in speed in Real-Time Coach that a lot of the higher speed stuff gets really dense. So, and I like to remind students of that because I want you to keep that in mind and try to always keep that in mind, because otherwise you kind of beat yourself up like, why is this 120 word per minute so hard? I can't do this. The practice is going to be harder than the test. And those accuracy requirements that you have for each of those practice sessions are considerably lower than what you need to pass a test, because we account for the fact that you're writing it in real time, and B, you're writing harder material than you're going to than you're going to write for a test. So we're not expecting 95% accuracy on the practice, whereas we do for a test. Does that kind of all make sense? That was a longer answer than I probably needed to give you. And I'm sure you all realize that Real-Time Coach is the platform that you're going to take all your Texas certifications and your national certifications as well.
I've reminded them about that they're gonna, whether, because we're about to finish our last module with them, and then they're gonna go on their own speed building. And I've told them no matter what program they choose, they're eventually gonna need to get RTC before they get ready to take the test so that they get comfortable. So,
Yeah, and the way it's set up on all of the speed building pathways that we've just talked about. So let me just go back here. Every one of these, when you go to the testing session, so actually once you read the instructions here on how to take a test in RTC, and you do a couple of practice tests, those are the exact same steps that you will take for your national certifications, Texas certifications. If you ever want to work in California, the California certifications. Florida's just been added to online testing with Real-Time Coach. So a lot of the state associations, and they all test the same way. So once you get used to taking your tests, every one of these testing sessions, every single one of them, you're going to follow the exact same steps you will for your certifications, which means by the time you graduate and go to take your NCRA tests or your TCRA tests, you're able to do this in your sleep. You don't have the stress of, oh, wait, how do I do this? And have to get yourself prepared for that. You will have been doing it all along. And that's a lot of certifications is really just being comfortable with the process. The skills one part of it, but a lot of people have failed a test just because they get nervous about the process. So that part we can eliminate. Let's make it nice and easy, and you're comfortable with the process as you practice day in and day out. Hopefully that makes sense.
yes, it does. Everybody's so quiet tonight.
I know they're just whelmed.
Yes, they are whelmed.
Well, other questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a question. So as the speeds go up, how many do the amounts of practice sessions, like the total for each speed, do you have more and more when they buy the actual, or lease it or whatever, buy it from you for like a year or something?
Yeah,
How many total different lessons do they have for each speed, like variety wise, I guess?
that's a great question. So at 80 words per minute, it starts with, so I think we've done 16 sessions, excuse me, for each speed, but the 80 words per minute, we've combined the literary, jury, and Q&A. When you start going up in speed, so I think starting with 100, if not 120. Yeah, so starting at 100, we've broken it down into separate. So you'll have 16 sessions of literary and then 16 sessions of jury charge. And you don't have to do them in this order. You can jump to jury charge or Q&A, but you've got 16 sessions for lit, jury, and Q&A. And so that's the case then all the way through to 225. Now, what I can do is include just what we call judicial. It's grayed out here on the menu at the moment, but just the judicial material, which is where all of these individual speed, um, it is the source from which all of this material is pulled, but there's more, in other words, there are thousands of judicial exercises. So there aren't thousands of them in these, what we call the speed pathways, the 80 to 225. So I can just make that judicial available as well, so that you guys, if you want to just sort of drop out of the pathways where it's sort of that gated approach where you have to do everything that we've told you to do, you can drop out and just do the judicial and practice different things just to mix it up. So just let me know if you'd like that. I'm happy to do it that way. Sometimes you just want a little variety.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that's the biggest complaint with anything, like, because the two cohorts TVCC has used, that's the biggest complaint with EV360 is just they have the same like 150 practice things for each speed, but then it
Yep.
just increases and they're the same ones, but then you're just getting more
Oh.
longer content, I guess,
Oh,
for each
gotcha.
speed.
Yeah, no,
And then
ours are going to be different for every,
okay.
yeah, gotcha. Yeah, but even then, when you're sort of, the approach makes sense that we're, sort of keeping you on a very narrow path moving forward with what you need for that particular speed. But sometimes it does get boring. So yeah, we'll just open up all the judicial material so you can bounce around and mix in some different things as well.
That sounds
So
good.
Not a
once you get
problem.
done with like practice 1 through 16 and then you take the test and you pass it, do you do that with every category and then move up in speed?
Um, Typically, yes, but the way that you guys are doing it, because this is going to be kind of a self-paced thing, you're going to have access to all of the speeds. So you'll be able to go from 80 to, 200 if you wanted. So you don't, in other words, you don't have to complete all of the 80s before the 100s are available to you. You're actually going to be able to start. Um, and part of the reason we do that is because you find, especially as you start getting higher in speeds, there's a reason why for all of the certifications, the literary is at a lower speed than the jury charge is at a lower speed than the Q&A. So you're going to start to find that, you may start out sort of doing everything around 80 words per minute, but then as you get faster, you're going to find you're faster at Q&A than you are at jury charge and then you are at literary. So you'll be able to jump forward. In other words, if you're struggling with the 80 word per minute literary, but you're doing really well, the 80 Q&A was easy peasy, you can go ahead and jump to the 100 Q&A. Does that make sense? So one of the categories won't hold you back on the others. Hopefully I explained that so it made sense. Nancy understood it anyway. Nancy's nodding.
Could you do probably the biggest question that they're, or one of the biggest questions, top 2 or 3 questions they're wondering about is how does your program work, subscription wise, or, payments? How does that work? How much is the cost? How many months? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're setting it up for you guys so you can it'll be an auto renew. So if you want to opt out, you just need to let customer care know, but you'll be able to you'll be charged 1 month at a time, so you don't have to do a long commitment. And then it's because you are doing the testing as well, then it'll be $56 a month. And so the first time you buy, you'll put your card in and then it'll just renew every month until you tell us no.
And then, what do you, once they get to, they've passed the lit at 180, they've been passing those tests, and then, they focus on finishing with the jury charge and the Q&A, and then they get to the jury charge, they pass a couple at 200, and then they're at the 225. I mean, do you just suggest trying to pass at least, I mean, a minimum of like 3 at, what do you suggest to them? Because, it's been 30 years since I was in school. We had to pass
Yep.
3 of each
Yep.
before yeah, so,
Yeah,
um,
and that is, I mean, even though you're not an NCRA approved school, if you want to kind of stick to the NCRA requirements, it would be 3 tests at each speed. So you would need 3 lit at 180, 3 jury charge at 200, and 3 Q&A at 225. And honestly, I think that's helpful because every test that you pass helps your confidence. It builds your confidence a bit. So you then, and a lot of this is confidence. You'll need that confidence to carry you into, your certification tests as
mhm.
well. And I don't know if you all are planning to become members of NCRA, but their first certification is it's relatively new. It's, I don't know, maybe 5 years old now. It's the RSR, which is I know I'm going to get this wrong, registered, I want to say registered student reporter, and I don't think that's right. But anyway, it's at lower speeds. It's at 160 lit, 180 jury, and 200 Q&A. So you could get that certification under your belt, before you even pass that 180, 200, and 225. And again, anything that you get is a confidence builder. So you can then go into your state CSR and then the RPR with already one certification under your belt.
Yeah, and as a reminder, I don't, in Texas, they cannot work in court, but they can start depositions once they've passed 200 tests and gotten that status. They can do
Great.
depositions.
Yeah.
And
So
I think CART, they can do 180, even at 180 or
I
something.
think
I can't
so. Yeah.
verify that, but
Yeah.
which is great. So,
Yeah. Just a- any of those tests, any of those certifications you get under your belt, to me, it accomplishes 2 things. One, it's that confidence builder, as we've talked about. And number 2, it shows sort of to the outside world, if you will, that you have this skill set. And the more credentials you add after your name, it really just shows people that you've got the wherewithal to to practice and pass those certifications. So I think they'll all bode well for you. So start when you can.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you ladies have any other questions for her, for Marybeth?
Nope. Okay. Well, I'll let you get on with your night being whelmed. How about that?
Okay.
Just
Thank you
just
so
be whelmed.
much.
You're welcome. And Judy, you've got my email, so feel free to share that with them and give me probably a day or two to get everything set up. If you will send me their names and
Mhm.
email addresses, again, there's no harm, no foul. We'll get you set up with a login. If you want to log on and purchase, great. If you don't, it's not going to cost you anything. You're going to have a login to use whenever or
Okay.
if and when you're ready to use it.
And you'll let them have just like a free trial of like a full week once it gets set up,
Yeah, we could.
did
Yeah,
you
I can
say?
do that. Yep.
Okay, that would be
Yep. Do
wonderful.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they would appreciate that.
Yep. We can do it.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Thank
All
you.
right. You're
Yes,
welcome.
thank
You all have a
you.
good night.
You
Yes,
too.
thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, all right. Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'll let you just take your break. And we can talk about it after too, once you get back. Okay, let's take our break, come back. How about let's do 7:15? Come back at 7:15.